Hey, what's up, you guys? This is Elliot, tuning in from The Bachelor and the Dad. I want to make an important video, and you might find this funny because of the nature of my channel, it being called The Bachelor and the Dad. But I want to make a video right now. I'm watching something about the whole gender war thing, which has been intriguing to me as of recent, and I think I've come up with something. The gender war is a hoax. Now, let me explain what I mean by that from the Dzogchen perspective. It's not a hoax in that it's not happening, but it's a hoax in that we're taking these thoughts and we're taking these emotions that we have in regards to gender based on plenty of past things that have happened, and we're concretizing them based on these past things that have happened, and we're turning that into a narrative, and that narrative we're using to explain our behavior as red pill or feminist or this or that. So really, what the gender war is it's an ideological war. It's a war in which people have taken concretized ideas about what gender means, and there's all these gender theories, all of it being very new in some sense, or exploratory. For instance, it's not as old as religion. The idea of gender, like theology and gender wars. Not to say that men and biological women haven't had conflicts, but the idea of gender as a theology is quite new. So I just want to put it out there that I think that it's potentially a hoax in that it's about people concretizing their reality around an ideology that is just kind of silly, to be honest. It's really silly. And the truth is that a lot of people are profiting off of it. Now I'm kind of aware that I'm making this this podcast and this video series of video talks, and I'm aware that one of the things that came to mind when I was creating this was basically my desire to have a family. And I had this idea that I would talk to other guys and somehow find the right hacks out or the right support from my male brothers, which is great, obviously, and that somehow I would crack the code and get get the perfect partner and have a family. And I think that those are good intentions to have, right? If that's what you want to do, it's a great intention to come to mind. But again, it's so funny because from the Dzogchen perspective, everything is a manifestation of creative energy and potential unceasingly. And that energy itself and its manifestation is not separate from the basic space in which it appears. And this path of Dzogchen is a direct path. But nonetheless, we have this thing called the gender wars, and you could say in Dzogchen sometimes they say something like one ground, two paths. I think that's a Dzogchen teaching. Yeah, one ground, two paths. The ground of everything doesn't change. The ground of all phenomena is basic space. But there's two paths. One is a path of recognition of that, and one is a path of going away from recognizing it, of contraction, basically. So from that perspective, what does that tell you about, gender, gender wars, or even political battles of this time? These battles, although these battles are short-lived, right? And these battles are never conclusive. These battles between ideologies, between theologies, they come and they go, The earth itself, we know, has come into existence, and it won't exist forever. But the essence of the earth is basic space. And the essence of these concepts that people grasp to over lifetimes and lifetimes and lifetimes and pass on to each other, and the essence of that is basic space. But the question is whether we recognize that, particularly around thoughts and emotions and concepts. Somehow, thoughts and emotions and concepts are ones that we can particularly concretize for some reason. They give us this kind of juicy sense of identity that is really positive in one sense. It's hard to, identity, culture, these things are really positive. And actually, one of the things, again, back to the idea of pointing out the nature of the mind, is that we really have we have to use culture. We have to, it's hard to avoid. Maybe I should have to is a strong word, but it's hard to avoid using some form or using some gesture or using some expression to point out the truth that all phenomena are expressions of and exist within and are this basic, open, intelligent, loving awareness, basic space. It's hard to say that without saying it. It's hard to communicate. It's hard to pass this on without having a method to do so. We need a method in some way. So it's interesting. These one of my favorite Buddhist teachers, and I believe he also teaches Dzogchen, although I've never been to a talk of his that was branded as Dzogchen, but his name's Dzongchen Khyentse Rinpoche, and one of the things that he says, where was I going with this? We need culture to communicate. Well, here's another thing he says. He's often on my mind. We need culture to communicate. We don't need it. Culture is an expression of the basic state of emptiness and bliss. But one of the issues he says that arises with culture is that we get habituated into the culture and we forget what the culture is pointing at. So like something like a beautiful Byzantine church, right, is pointing to this mystical truth. Something like a statue of the Buddha was designed to help us remind us of the truth of the Buddha, which is a being who has awoken to this truth of great natural perfection. But it's a catch-22, right? It's, on one hand, we need the culture. We need, for instance, this podcast, we need direction as men. We need to have some basic guidance to achieve a certain aim. But the issue always is with ideological wars or cultural wars and so on and so forth, we forget that the culture is pointing to something bigger and deeper and more important. And that bigger, deeper, more important thing is the nature of our consciousness, the nature of our mind, the truth of all mystical teachings. And even now we have a more mundane secular culture. There's, I wouldn't, it wouldn't surprise me if some people have really had, great awakening, relative awakening experiences through this whole gender wars thing. But nonetheless, I do wonder about it, and I think, practically speaking, it's really not. It's funny that I've started this podcast. I must have a humorous side, but I don't really. I don't know if it helps. I don't know if it always helps. Speaking for. I started this podcast out with kind of a confession saying, I'd like to find a partner. And in that regards, it's hard to say if this is a skillful means, because actually what I really want is to be connected with my nature. And my nature has always been there. And it's really through... You can't have love for everyone else if you don't have self-love. So there's really no hope in having a successful relationship in the kind of kitchen sink level with another human being, another woman, as a man, if you don't first love yourself. It's not going to be very successful. It doesn't matter how much men's work you do, or red pill, blue pill, this pill, that pill that you take. If you don't love yourself, then you're not going to be able to love another person. And when it comes to loving yourself, the nature of our mind is open, spacious love. There's a famous quote that the Dzogchen teacher Tolkien Urgyen used to often bring up, and and that his son Chokyi Nyingma Rinpoche brings up as well. Buddhist teachers. In the moment of love, the empty essence dawns nakedly. So the idea is that, let's start with, our relative self, so to speak, even though that's an expression of this love, but let's just start there. If you can't have self-love, we can't love others. So in the moment of love, the empty essence dawns nakedly. So when we are truly in love, when we truly experience love, we see clearly, nakedly, with our own empty essence, with the act of looking and looking at the objects, that whole dualistic process, we see right through it. Sorry, there's a bug. See right through it. So in the moment of love, the empty essence dawns nakedly. But perhaps, back to the idea of this podcast, this vlog and this channel, perhaps, if you're a man who's struggling in the area of relationships, whether you're in a marriage or you're not, perhaps one of the most important things is to love yourself first. Because if you don't love yourself, how are you going to love someone else? So, just wanted to put that out there, put some of these ideas out there. I think that, it might be good from time to time to look at all of the ideologies of the world and look at all of the competing wars and factions and great rulers and realize that while they're an expression of the nature, that expression isn't stuck. And what that means is that it's not going to last. The things that we take as being solid and real are not as solid as real or real as we're taking them. And it's because we take them to be so solid and real that we suffer. And that while the ground is the same, the path we're going on is a path away from the recognition of the ground of being the great perfection. So I've got my red cap on. I've got my I kind of look like a red pill guy somehow. And I want to talk to all other red pill guys out there, or guys that are struggling with relationships, whether they be with their family or their work or whatever. You need to start with loving yourself. That's my advice from my heart. And through loving yourself, you're going to start to be able to connect with the bigger web of life. You're going to not feel so isolated and alone. You're not going to feel as if there's you, the little you here, that's battling against the rest of the world. So yeah, I hope that this video is helpful to you guys. I'm going to title it "The Gender Wars Are a Hoax," because I think that they are a hoax. They're a hoax from the point of view of the great perfection. And in the great perfection, we can even see how something like the gender wars, even though there's a lot of pain there, even though there's a lot of hope there, when you really look at it very clearly, it is an expression of love. Even in the confusion, even in the lack of understanding between the two tribes. It's not to say that there aren't more skillful ways of relating to it and of making it better and of healing the divide. That's totally true. But even in, really dark, gruesome, challenging things, in all different types of existence, realms of being, ways of being, the great perfection, all those different realms and states of being are none other than the great perfection. To use theistic language, they're none other than the love of God. That's hard for the mind, which wants to fixate on concepts, and fixate on feelings, and fixate on thoughts, and fixate on the past, and fixate on what the future is going to be, to understand. But when you become very attuned to the present moment, you see how quickly it's going, and in that awake awareness, in that spacious awareness which accommodates all, there's great wisdom, and that great wisdom is none other than the nature of your mind, which can be pointed out to you by authentic Dzogchen teachers. So, from the point of view of training, once it's pointed out to you, then you train in that view. You train resting your mind in that view, in that perspective, in that open clarity that was pointed out to you. Again and again, short times, not trying to draw it out at all. Short times, many times, until the experience becomes continuous. And when it becomes continuous, it's not as if you go into some detached state that is apart from the nature. You actually start manifesting the qualities of the nature. And the qualities of the nature itself is great love and great wisdom. Love being acceptance and understanding of all beings, and wisdom being knowing how to skillfully engage beings to be of benefit. What kind of benefit? To point them to their true nature. That's it. So, all right, guys, my eyes are getting red, and I think I'm done for tonight. But I hope that this video is helpful, and I hope that it gives you courage if you're a man or a woman in this current climate. And I hope it helps you even in relative, ordinary ways. Just enjoy your life and make your human journey. All right? Take good care, everyone. Be well, and I'd like to end with namaste, God bless. Have a great night. All right.